Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's your host, Belmont, and welcome back to another episode of Power Vacuum. Today I'm going to be doing the Ultimate Dune Showdown. I'm going to be talking about the three major Dune adaptations: the 80s Dune, the 2000 sci-fi Dune, and the 2020s Dune. And basically, which one was the most accurate, what they got right, less about what they got wrong, because if I start getting into what they got wrong, I'm not a long form content. I'm not going to make a 3-hour freaking video. And if I start talking about everything they got wrong, this will be a 3-hour video. I'm going to try to keep this a little short and sweet for me, which, maybe 20, 30, I'm not even going to guess what the time is. I'm just going to go. So I just got done power watching all the freaking Dunes. Like I've watched Lynch's a couple times, I watched Villeneuve's a couple times, and I watched the Sci-fi series twice through just to get like a good feel for it. And I had vague memories of the Sci-fi series, and I found out after watching all three parts that I'd only ever seen the first part. And I never saw the second or third part, and I was missing like a lot of stuff from it. And after finishing it, I understand why it's so highly praised. Like, it's got very high reviews if you go back and look at it. And I get it now, because as far as accuracy is concerned, as adaptations go, it is the most accurate. It is as close to a book as you can get without making like an 8-hour epic because of how much information actually is in the Dune novels. Well, novel, because this is all based off the first book. So basically, the 80s movie comes in at around 2 hours and 20 minutes, I believe. There is a director's cut, or a non-director's cut, a studio cut, I should say, that's about an hour longer, but that one doesn't make a lot of sense when you watch it because they made Lynch reshoot parts to shorten the story. And when you go back and add stuff in after doing reshoots, the stuff you add in doesn't really sync with the current version, and it's wacky. So if you're gonna watch the 80s Dune, watch the original theatrical cut. That's the one that makes more sense. That's the one that's kind of more true to the story without getting all wacky and mishmash screwed up story. The TV series comes in at around 4 hours and 40 to 50 minutes. I think it's like 4 hours and 47 minutes or something like that for all three parts. And the two parts of the 2020s movie come in right around 5 hours. So you've got that. The two newer versions are around the same length, so they definitely had more to work with. And let's just get into it. Basically, the 80s one got quite a bit right when it came to the story. It got Paul's character right, Chani's character right. They cut out a lot of Stilgar's character. They cut out certain key scenes that I think helped explain Paul's development. Like, they didn't have the knife fight with Jamis, which was like definitely an important part of the book, an important part of the other two adaptations that it's in there. And they cut out some of the intermittent scenes in the middle with Paul and his interactions with some of the characters that just aren't in the movie. The TV show fills in more of Paul's character. It is the most accurate in the fact that it actually addresses the ecological storyline and about how like the Fremen have been bribing the Spacing Guild to make satellites around Arrakis illegal, so people don't realize that the southern hemisphere of the planet is not only livable but being terraformed, and has lots of plant life growing around it. It's something that none of the movies address. I should say, none of the major motion pictures address. Where the TV show does address that, it gets most of the character stuff right. It's got Alia's story is in it. Chani's whole story is in it. They actually address Paul and Chani's child. They address its death too. There's a real fucked up scene when you're watching it where there's like this. They don't show anything, but there's like this psycho killing people in the siege, and he sees the little kid, and he just pulls his knife out and grins, and you're like, oh, holy shit! Oh, that was kind of dark. That got dark real fast. Didn't see that coming. Once I saw the child, I was like, oh, they're gonna have the kid. There's gonna be an off-camera scene where he dies. I didn't expect it to be, a psychopath knifing a baby, but that's how they broke it down. And then, Villanueva's doesn't really cover that at all. And I'm kind of bouncing all around. I'll try to streamline this a little more to where I hit each point for each movie. But yeah, let's start by talking about Chani. How the first movie, Chani's there and she's kind of like on Paul's side, but she's more of like a footnote. In the TV series, she's like her true character. Like they show her being the second to Jessica when Jessica drinks the waters of life. In case Jessica dies, Chani's going to have to do it next. And she's going to have to be the one that becomes the Reverend Mother. That's like not addressed at all in the either motion picture thing. Like it's not in there. Like I said, it's not in Lynch's and it's not in Villanueva's version at all. Her child is only shown in the Sci-fi series. The fact that they address that she's Dr. Kine's daughter, I think, is only shown in the Sci-fi series. I don't remember. I think there's one line where they mention something like that in the Lynch movie, but they don't actually like sink home or like make any kind of point to it. In the Sci-fi series, she has to deal with the fact that, she lost her father. Her father was effectively the leader of the Fremen and was her father. Well, let's talk about Dr. Kynes now. Dr. Kynes was the Emperor's spy, but he was like a double agent. He worked for the Emperor, but he was the unofficial leader of the Fremen. They called him Liet or Leet. I don't know how they pronounce it. I say Liet. And the first movie, they show the beginning of his death, but not his actual death. The Harkonnens just destroy his still suit and send him to the desert to die. Where in the sci-fi show, the sci-fi version, they destroy his still suit, send him into the desert, and you actually see what happens to him the way it does in the book. He dies to a spice explosion. Where in the new movie, Dr. Kynes isn't a man. Dr. Kynes is a woman now, inexplicably for some reason. I don't know why. As if there weren't enough strong women in this movie. They had to just make Dr. Kynes a woman and then completely change the death to where she's eaten by a sandworm. And then there's no mention of her relation to Chani and whether or not she's Chani's mother in this version. It wouldn't make sense to make her Chani's mother as far as the story is concerned because of the way Chani was raised. But so I think they just excised that entire part. It's part of the character assassination of Chani that I absolutely despise in the new movie. And then let's see. The whole story is about Paul, so I'm really not going to talk about him. They do get Paul the most accurate as a character in the sci-fi series. Visually, he's most accurate in the Villanuevas, and the way he... that's it. Yeah, I would say the David Lynch version kind of... He looks more like adult Paul in the David Lynch version, which makes sense because I think the actor was 26 or 27. The way, in fact, I think they've all been about 26 or 27. Every actor that's played Paul has been supposed to be playing this 15-year-old kid at the age of 26. And so when they show the time jump to him becoming 19, which is how old he's canonically at the end of Dune, well, 20-ish, there's the years ahead, he becomes 19, and then there's that last stretch which spans over about a year, so he's 20-ish by the end of the actual book. But he none of them really get the fact, none of them portray the fact that Paul's supposed to be like 15, Fade Rotha's supposed to be like 17, Chani's supposed to be like 16. They don't really drive that home. I guess you could say that Timothée Chalamet kind of looks like a 15 or 16 year old. He looks more like 19-year-old Paul, so he fits that bill really well. But yeah, visually, I would say Paul's character is best by Chalamet in the Villanueva version, and story-wise best by the Sci-Fi series. And if we're looking at like, had they done Children of Dune, the original Paul from the 80s one would be visually the best one, because he's like, that's full grown. He's tall enough to be the character later on, because Paul, he grows throughout the series because he starts as a child. Let's see. We're going to move on to Duke Leto now. Who's the best Duke Leto? I'm going to have to go with probably like a toss-up between the two major motion pictures. The original one and Oscar Isaac were both kind of like dark-haired, olive-skinned, tall but not too tall. I actually don't know how tall Oscar Isaac is, but they fit the description well, because when you read the book, the Atreides family is basically described as Hispanic or like Spanish, like Spaniards from Spain. Dark hair, dark eyes, olive skin, round face. The grandfather is straight up described as wearing matador clothing and died fighting a bull. Like, that's as Spaniard as you get when it comes to stories. So they really nailed those home. I think Oscar Isaac did a great job. He got the stoicness of the character, but he got a little over emotional in the book. Leto is always like reserved, and his emotions are all internal, where your best actual actor to portray that was in the Sci-Fi TV series, because it was freaking William Hurt, who was a seasoned actor already when he took on the role, and like really well known at the time. Nailed it down as far as like stoicism and portraying a cool and calm, collected person, even in like the face of danger and whatnot. And let's see, next major character would probably be Stilgar, who is again best depicted in the Sci-Fi series. That's it. Villanueva's version's pretty good. Lynch's version's pretty good. But the Sci-Fi series just takes the cake because they have a lot of the key moments in it. They have the actual fight with Jessica in the Sci-Fi series, where he calls her a weirding woman, which I think happens in all of the versions, but they show the weirding way in the actual Sci-Fi series, which is like a mystical martial art. And in the Sci-Fi series, it's depicted as like superhuman martial art. Like, they can move so fast that they become like blurs, which is kind of cool. It's like, it's almost after imagey. It's one of the effects in the Sci-Fi series that actually looks nice, because the sci-fi series is hard to look at sometimes. Not gonna lie, it's an early 2000s sci-fi series. We're talking like PlayStation 2 cutscene graphics. But Stilgart best depicted in that. Jessica, as a character, gets the most screen time in the sci-fi series, and they get her character right. But I think Jessica's one of the ones where most of the time her character is done pretty well. In the new one, they do have this weird thing in Villanueva's where every time Paul is supposed to be speaking the litany of fear, it's Jessica for some reason. Where in the original, I think Jessica mentions it once, but then that's it. Where in the actual sci-fi series, every time Paul's supposed to be doing the litany of fear, it's Paul. They just don't have him recite the whole thing. He just recites like the first two stanzas, not even the stanzas, like the first two lines over and over again, and then cuts to the last line. And I don't know why they did that. They show the scenes and whatnot, but they just made it more of a Jessica thing in the new movie. And almost he mentions it, he does it once in the old series where like his hand's in the box doing the test with the Gom Jabbar. But yeah, Jessica's pretty on point. I think the best depiction of Jessica was in the original series though, because they really nailed the whole concubine thing, and she had the look and like the emotion. I just guess the actress was they were a lot more serious about the movie back then. The sci-fi one, she seems like she's not 100% on the role. Like you could tell she thinks it's a little bit silly. And then the Villanueva one, there's just too much focus on her. Like they add a lot of weird stuff to it that wasn't in the book. Again, her doing the litany of fear, her talking to Alia in the womb a lot, because Alia never makes no appearance. Let's talk about Alia now. I don't know why they completely cut her out of the new movie. She's kind of an important character. She was there. She helps raise Paul's daughter. Because she's basically, an ancient wise woman trapped in the body of a child, because she was subjected to the water of life in utero, however you want to say it, and she becomes endowed with all the memories of the women before her that took the thing, and she had no defense against it. Where like Jessica could steal her mind and control her body, Alia just had to take it and just be like, oh, I guess I have all the memories of everyone that came before me and all their knowledge now, and I'm trapped in this body of a child. And I think one of the characters in the book says that a character that gets cut out of every version, by the way, says that she is a child in appearance only, and it's probably one of the best things to describe. Alia is in the original movie, very brief lines. I guess they didn't want to have too much of a demanding thing. I think they actually got like a 4 or 5 year old to play the role, where in the sci-fi series, I think the girl that played her was like 7 or 8, so she was more developed as an actress and could actually like say some lines and get stuff done properly. Where in Lynch's version, you could tell it's just a child repeating the lines that they were told to read. Just like, here's your line, say it for the camera, here you go. Where the sci-fi series, she's definitely more appropriate. The sci-fi series, well, like, so in the 80s movie and the sci-fi series, she's actually the one to kill the Baron, like in the novel. Where in the new one, because she's not around, Paul kills him, which again I think is a ridiculous thing, because Paul isn't even there for the Baron's death. He's like sieging the Sardaukar troops with the Fremen when the Baron dies, and he doesn't even witness his death at all. He's not there. Like the only Harkonnen that he personally sees die, other than like the troops on the field, is Fade Rotha, who he bests in a knife fight. And let's go ahead and move on to the Harkonnens, where the Sci-Fi series once again takes the lead as far as depicting them. So like the Baron, every version shows him floating. He doesn't actually float in the books. He has these suspension things that reduce his weight so he can walk. Like he doesn't just fly around rooms like every version has shown him doing. And I think that was Lynch's influence. Like, you know, he wears the anti-gravity belt so he can fly, where in the book, the anti-gravity belt, he's so fat, he can't fly with the anti-gravity belt, but it makes him to where he's able to walk. I think the best Baron is definitely Stellan as far as attitude and personality and, like, ruthlessness go. Appearance-wise, the Sci-Fi series once again nails it with all of the Harkonnens, because the Baron was described. The only description you have of him is describing him when he was younger, not fat, but he is a blondish, red-haired, like a strawberry blonde kind of character, where they did make all the Harkonnens redheads and Lynch's, where Fade is actually Fade Rotha is a dark-haired person. Like he's more of a what do they call them? The Black Germans, the Southern Germans, where they had dark hair and dark features from the barbarian tribes. He's more like that. He's definitely tall and lean, like he's supposed to be in the Sci-Fi series, where he's just Sting in the movies, and I couldn't see anything but Sting, because by the time I saw the movie, even as a child, I was very well aware of who Sting was and was like, why is Sting in this? That was my take on that. And the Fade Rotha from the new one is just excellent performance, but looks nothing like the character. Like, I don't know why they made all the Harkonnens bald. I don't know why they made them all like black and white. It was a weird choice. Having the non-drugged soldier fight him was great, because that's actually what happens in the book. And having them pointed out that it's like a test. The only series that expresses the relationship between Fade and the Baron is the Sci-Fi one, because at one point Fade tries to assassinate the Baron to take his place. And the Baron's like, why shouldn't I kill you? And he's like, well, if you kill me, then you're only going to have Robin. And he's like, you've saved your own life, because I cannot leave my legacy to him. I want it to go to my actual, my chosen heir, which is you. But I'm going to be watching you now. Don't try to assassinate me anymore, you little shit. Which, yeah, and the Sci-Fi series really nailed it. Let's go ahead and start talking about the grittiness, the bread and butter of any show is the special effects. And yeah, the sci-fi comes in last place. Like I said, it looks like PlayStation 2 cutscene graphics. It's not easy to look at, especially now after all this time. A lot of the graphics didn't age well. Some of them did. Some of the scenes you're like, okay, this looks good. Like I said, the Weirding Way stuff looks good. It's just like quick movements, some fading, flashing. But like the sandworms look ridiculous. The scenes where Paul has visions are like almost hard to watch. Like the scenes from the 80s are probably equally hard to watch with the visions, because the visions from the 80s were just overlaying stuff. But then again, the scenes from the new one, the 2020 Dune, are also hard to watch, because it's just like these obnoxious slow motion flashes, and I think Zack Snyder has just ruined slow motion for me. Like, I see slow motion in something and go, oh, this isn't poignant or important. This is just delaying what I'm looking at. And then there's a lot of scenes. Well, yeah, the special effects. That's the bread and butter. The acting is, some of it's the best in the original. Some of it's the best. Some of it's better in the original. Some of it's better in the 2020s. Some of it's better in the new. Like I said, Paul, I think, probably acts more like his character in the Sci-fi series. Looks more like his character in the new one. And Lynch's goes, last place for that. The actual accuracy goes to Sci-fi, then Lynch, and then Villanueva. Because they just took too many liberties. He took too many liberties with what he did in his version. I just didn't like the mouth breathing. My God, that shit drove me nuts. Especially when it was like Chani. Chani is a Fremen, born and raised. Like, if you want to say, oh, Paul does some mouth breathing when he's like running and exerting himself because, he grew up on a planet with water and like a thick atmosphere. But Chani running, like, there's this one scene where she's like carrying the rocket launcher after they blow up the ornithopter, and she's just breathing so fucking heavy, and it's just and it's like 10 or 11 times she does that, and I'm like, oh my God, she's a Fremen. She would never breathe out her mouth. She wears a still suit. She knows about cyclical breathing. She has incredible control over her like support system in life. Like, why would you do this? What? It's not poignant. It's not like riveting. It's not edge of my seat shit. The scene in question that I'm talking about, the danger's past when she's doing it. I'm like, what the hell? I don't care. Like, she's not in danger. Why is she huffing and puffing? That bothered me. Her whole character bothers me. Her being the skeptic, her being the one that's mad at Paul for all this shit, her not being by Paul's side or trusting his decisions in the end. I'm like, oh my God, why did you change your character this way? Like, this whole each woman has to be strong and independent shit needs to end in Hollywood. They're going to destroy the industry. There's a reason the hero's journey and the damsel in distress stories have lasted for thousands and thousands of years. It's because they work. That's what most people want to see. Women want to see a strong man rescuing a woman. Men want to see a woman being rescued by a strong man. Are there exceptions to this rule? Yes, but they should be the exception, not the rule. And right now, it's the rule. Oh, Chani didn't like Paul's thing, so she's just going to run off and do her own thing. And I don't know how they're going to freaking do Dune Messiah. Are they going to have kids? Is she going to bear his children? Is there going to be like some sort of off-screen shit that happens that they don't explain? Or is it going to be excused by a single line of dialogue like some people think that they can do now to fix plot holes in movies? Just, oh, big old plot hole. Well, we could fix that with one line of dialogue. Thank God they invented the whatever device. Thank you for smoking reference for anyone that gets that. Watch that movie too. I'm rambling, but that's why I'm here. I'm here to ramble. I'm a rambler. I'm a rambler. I'm not going to keep singing that in case I get copyright struck. But it's just one of those things that, like, yeah, there's just too much changing in the new one. And if I were going to rate them in my personal favorite order, so here we are. I've done my ramblings. I've talked a bit about the series of each one, what I think, what I feel. I'm going to rate them. I'm not going to give them, like, if you want number ratings, I can, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to put them in 1, 2, 3 order. And my favorite is still David Lynch's. It's concise. It gets the majority of the message across. While I don't like some of the things they did, like leaving out Although they leave Hawat and Jamiz's wife is missing in every version. Just straight up, bye bye. None of those characters exist for what they are and what they've done in the story. But making the weirding way a weirding module and a sonic weapon instead of a martial arts is my biggest complaint with the 80s Dune. But overall, and I'm pretty sure there's some bias in here because it's the first one I saw. It's the one that's most firm in my memory. It's the thing that got me into Dune because I didn't even know it was a novel before I saw the movie. Saw the movie, found out it was a book, had to go read it. It got me into Dune. So it still remains as my favorite. The sci-fi is my second favorite now. While the effects are kind of rough and like some of the side characters are hard to believe in their performances, it is just so accurate to the book that I have to place it above the new ones. And I place the new ones, the Villanueva ones, in third because yes, they're beautiful and like they have wonderful scenery. I could do without the constant chanting or the throat singing that happens a lot in it. And there's just too many liberties and too many changes to people's character, and the omission of more characters in that than there are in the rest that places it in third place in my book. Do I like all three versions? Yeah. Will I watch them all in the future? Yeah, I think all the versions have excellent rewatchability. I just think Lynch's is my favorite. The Frank Herbert's Dune from Sci-Fi Channel is my second favorite, and Villanueva's my third. They're all good in their own right, but that's my ranking. And that's all I've got for today. Belmont out.